Please wait while the system starts. Okay. Record. Record. Oh, there we go. All right.
All right, we're going to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Alderman Como is not here, so Alderman Clemens agreed to serve as the clerk. So I will ask Alderman Clemens to call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Donchis.
Here?
Alderman Klee. Alderman Como. Alderman Gouveia.
Here.
Alderman Clemens is here. Alderwoman Timmons.
Here.
Alderman Moran.
Here.
Thank you. Also present is Alderman Sullivan.
All right. So the first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the committee? If not, we do have a special item tonight, which is that John Griffin is here to address the subject of the expenditure reports, which show expenditures versus the budget. And Alderman Sullivan, who is attending, was interested in learning more about our current situation and about Mr. Griffin's approach in general towards this issue. So I apologize for making people wait, but it shouldn't be very long. And I thought we should take this part at the beginning of the meeting. Here is, thank you, and I want to thank Mr. Griffin for coming in on a Wednesday night in December, longest night of the year. And so could you please give us your general outlook regarding the expenditure reports?
Sure. John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector. Thank you for inviting me. I wanted to provide a little bit of background as to the Board of Aldermen's role in the Financial Services Division and all the other divisions and departments throughout the city. And I've kind of taken this approach since I've been here, 2010 forward. So as you know, we have financial statements on the website under the Financial Services Division. And those financial statements are generally uploaded 15 days after the prior month closes. And what's interesting about those financial statements is they have the original budget, the available budget, any encumbrances or spend to date as of that month, and a percent used. So, for example, today I looked at the summary report. There's a summary report for revenue, summary report for appropriations, and then all the detail. And for those of you that are on the Budget Review Committee and those of you that vote on the final budget, you've basically approved that budget. So the other good news we have in the city is for the larger departments, such as the school department, police department, fire department, they have business finance folks in there under the chief's direction and leadership, superintendent's leadership. I worked in the private sector for several years, and I'm familiar with quarterly reports, earnings calls, things of that nature. Not really applicable to the city because we spend an awful lot of time reviewing the budget. So for example, last May through July, or end of June, you approved the fiscal 23 budget. School department a little bit different, they start a lot earlier, but at the end of the day, we crafted a $303 million general fund budget. And those individuals that are the chiefs, the directors, division directors, managers, they're all very knowledgeable, as you learned last year, about their budget. Most of the budget is employee-driven. About $177 million of the $303 million budget is comprised of wages, benefits, and pension, and FICA-MEDI on the tax side. So what happens during the year, there's attrition, there's people leaving, people coming. but the directors, chiefs, financial managers, they all have an eye of what's available. And in certain cases, we watch that through the year. If there's any issues, like you probably recall last year, the fire department, the fire chief came in and said, we really have an issue with what's called pent-up vacation and sick time pursuant to the pandemic. So he came in and said, you know, we're really not gonna make it with this budget. So you were able to review and approve a supplemental appropriation for the fire department. In addition to that, from time to time, we have retirements that ordinarily we take the monies from the $500,000 retirement trust fund and move it into the divisions. But if there's a run on that fund, in other words, more people retiring than we had planned for, that might need some help. But generally speaking, because the departments have come in, presented to you folks the personnel requirements and the non-personnel requirements, they in quotes, manage to that budget. It's very rare that they have to come in, very rare that they can't possibly overhire. Mayor Donchis signs requests to fill for new positions and budgeted positions. And me and my staff on the financial management side, we're always reviewing expenditures. Meaning you can't put a purchase order in the system that's more than what's on that certain account. So there's all kinds of checks and balances. But if you want to review the financials, you can simply go online. If you have any questions, you could ask me. But there's some nuances at the bottom of that analysis where, for example, the Board of Aldermen approved slightly over $5 million to put in the risk fund. You're going to see that line, and it's going to say $5 million budget, $5 million transferred. So that's going to have nothing left. So you got to toggle back and forth. I looked at the police and fire. If I take 5 months divided by 12, I get about 42%. They're pretty close. They're well on. As you learn from the police department, to the extent they have unfilled positions, they might have overtime requirements. And the chief and his staff, they manage that pretty effectively. Fire department's interesting because they have minimum manning, so they don't close any companies. They don't go with a company that's less than 4 people. And the chief's done a great job explaining that. So that's on those two big, large departments. The school department's interesting because they're often, they don't teach in July and August. So to look at any quarterly amount, it would be a little bit less than that traditional 25% spend. But they review Mr. Donovan through the Finance and Ops Committee. He's always watching the particular spend. And what's interesting is the spend is not the same every month. There's personnel coming and going, but even on the non-personnel, bills come in at different times of the year. And what when I first met Mr. Donovan, he said, the one thing I'm going to make sure is we don't run out of money. So there's really no surprises there. As Mayor Donchis indicated, most recently, the school department turned back a lot of unappropriations not spent. They also appropriated things that they need. So in summary, I'm a phone call away. The financial statements, you kind of need to know a little bit behind the scenes as to when these costs are incurred. And then on the revenue side, some things might come in higher than expected, especially if building permits and things of that nature are robust. But as we always say when we meet with you folks during budget, we conservatively budget for revenues for 2 reasons. One is it's much appreciated from the rating agencies, but secondly, we really don't want to come back and say we missed the boat. And one of our largest non-tax revenue generation areas is motor vehicle registrations, and we try to be conservative there. And after all that, we then begin the closing process through the summer months of identifying revenues above budget, appropriations not spent, and then that feeds into the September 1st mayor's report on overlay and surplus. So it's unlikely that there'd be any surprise, I'd say surprises, that somebody would be spending more than their budget. So we've got a pretty good system in place, and but anybody can always ask a question. You have in front of you on a bi-weekly basis, or when you meet, the record of expenditures. Those are items that have already been spent. You're attesting to the fact that the mayor and I have placed those in the right accounts for the city. And from time to time, we get questions, but those are amounts that are already spent. So with that, Mayor, thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mayor Donches. Thank you for coming out tonight to explain the reasons why my request might not work. I had the opportunity to go to the police commissioners meeting on Monday night. And what I liked about it is in the beginning, the business manager, apologies, I don't remember her name.
Karen Smith.
Thank you. So at the beginning of the meeting, they review the monthly budget. And they go through, and as any good department business manager would do, would kind of call out concerns. And specifically, I remember overtime. And she knew down to the penny almost why the overtime was where it was, and really to call out to the commissioners some of the concerns that she had. I have an untrained eye when it comes to city budgets, in that I've only been in this role for a year. I did sit through the city budget, and I am now understanding more about how the city takes in revenue, expends money, so on and so forth. However, I don't have the experience that you might have when it comes to trends, when it comes to things like maybe there's a fall in parking revenue or something like that. You can point back to, maybe you look back on certain trends. And again, I'm just using specifics as an example. I made the request because you have a trained eye. You have a very good experience when it comes to revenue and expenditures. I wanted to find out if we could take advantage of that to say, okay, nothing to see here in this quarter. So it was 4 updates per year. And at that point, okay, here's some concern on this revenue line or these expenditure lines, as opposed to avoid any surprises or just an overall knowing of the board of where we sit in a financial footing. So while it sounds as though any type of a verbal update, perhaps I would consider, not to put you on the spot, but perhaps a quarterly executive update summary. Here's what I see from the desk of CFO John Griffin on this quarter. So again, I appreciate you coming out tonight and explaining that, but I just wanted to put some color behind my request. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions, comments?
I'd just like to add, Mayor and
Go ahead.
members, that with my knowledge of how the police department operates, that gives me a significant level of comfort that the surprises are going to be limited. Would it be great if we could budget for the full complement of officers and $2.5 million of overtime? You really need, the reason why we have overtime is because we don't have enough officers, and you learn that when you go to those meetings. Fire department does the same analysis. School department I'm less familiar with, but like I said, they've got kind of a different spending pattern. But certainly the other departments, with the loss of employment, with difficulties in recruiting, we're not going to have as many problems on the appropriations being overspent. But I could certainly think of something that I could maybe at a high level help with on a quarterly basis.
I would appreciate it.
I am knowledgeable that you also, knowing that there's some attrition, you're interested in how we're doing on the filling of those positions, and the mayor reported on the economic development director in particular. But we do have a fairly large amount of positions open, more than, let's say, when I first started here in 2010. So that's kind of the climate out there. But let me put some thought to some high-level communication, and I think we can do a good job with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you.
So we'll go back to the regular order of the agenda. First communication is from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. This is in regards to Elm Street feasibility study contract amendment in the amount of $60,000 funded from 53142 Consulting Services. And I would move to approve the Elm Street Middle School feasibility study contract amendment with Marvel Design to better understand how the Elm Street Middle School land and/or building can be repurposed in the amount of $60,000. Funding will be through Department 183 Economic Development, Fund 53142 Consulting Services.
And I believe Mr. Cummings is here on this. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the committee members. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development, and I am here asking for your favorable consideration of the amendment to the contract to Marvell for $60,000. This is an additional scope of work. If you all recall, we started out on a path to figure out a plan for the Elm Street Middle School, which will be turned back to the city in the spring, summer of 2024. This is about 9 acres with 150-ish, 125,000 square foot structure on it. And it's relatively clear to me that we needed to extend the contract of the architect to help us develop how best we want to program and use those 9 acres. So to be clear, this is not specific to the conversation that we had last week, although if you were to look at this square and divide it into four quadrants, one of the quadrants could be the hockey rinks we spoke of last week, but not necessarily to that. This is a scope of work where we'll continue community engagement, continue to have the architects available to do some sketching, and develop a plan that hopefully is amenable to everyone, and we can proceed with putting it back out to an RFP and to the private sector, so it goes on to the taxable rolls.
Anybody? Questions, comments? Alderman Gouveia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just more of a quick question. Off the top of your head, project to date, how much have we spent on studying Elm Street so far?
Good question. I would have to double check, but I would say we've pretty much exhausted all the funds. Nope, I take that back. The original contract was divided into 3 phases, and the third phase, I have not allowed the architect to charge to that phase. So, there's probably off the top of my head somewhere in the range of $30,000 that would be available. In addition to this $60,000, but that is like a report writing phase, and that would be like a finalization type phase. It was very clear to me as we went through the contracting process that the community engagement and public input, we did not satisfy that, and so I didn't want to move on from there. So this would actually, if you want to think about it, even though it's an amendment to the entire contract, really what we're doing is adding additional funds to that phase of the contract.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you very much. Just some questions on the dates. I see that the original contract was signed on July 22nd of this year, 2022. And then just below that, it says Marvell and Nashua signed it on November 30th, 2021. Should that be 2022?
No, nope. I believe that this would be November of 21. Would be because this is an amendment to the original contract.
Okay.
which I would say we kicked off in earnest in February of '22, give or take.
Okay.
And we did, one and I would say a good part of the second phase of that contract throughout the last, well, we're in December now, but we really worked, a lot in the spring and summer. Come, I would say June, July, those who participate in PEDC and infrastructure know that come that June, July period, there wasn't the consensus, and so therefore, at that time, I asked for this additional scope of work.
And then further down, I see that there's a graphic here for extended engagement, final deliverables. That's all for this past year, 2022. So that's all passed.
No, that would be the additional scope of work that we would be adding.
So was that July, August, September, October of '23?
Just to clarify, where are you? What are you looking at?
I'm on the first page number 4 of our agenda. And then underneath additional services, scope and schedule, 3 stakeholder meetings, 2 community meetings, additional final report documentation. There's some verbiage, and then below that, there's a graphic that timelines out where these meetings are happening. Want me to show it to you?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you got it. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yep. So is that,
So what I would suggest is, the starting point of July 22, push that to January of 2022, because we didn't execute on this proposal in the summertime when I requested it. It's taken us time to get it through the process and whatnot, so we've been in a hiatus, if you will. We haven't moved on this project with additional community engagement, because so we would, if you will, think of it as a jumping off point of January of 2023 and continuing on. Does that help?
yes, thank you.
Anything else? Excuse me. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. Alderman Clemens.
It's regarding downtown circulation study in the amount of $56,600 funded from 53107, architect and engineering services / capital improvements. And I would move to approve and enter into a contract for a downtown circulation study with Vanessa Hangen Brusland Incorporated to assess circulation patterns that could support the permanent implementation of the road diet on Main Street in the amount of $56,600. Funding will be through Department 183 Economic Development, Fund 53107, Architect and Engineering Services / Capital Improvements. You okay?
Mr. Mayor, if I may? Thank you. So for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development, technically Director of Administrative Services. I'm here before you this evening to ask for your favorable approval on what is essentially an update of the original downtown circulation study that was done. It was done by VHB, and so this would be an update to that document. It would take into consideration the various changes that have occurred since the downtown circulation study was done. I think I just said 2016, but thinking about it now, I think it's actually technically earlier than that. I think it might have been 2015. Yeah. So with that all being said, Main Street has changed a lot over the last few years. We don't know whether we'll be doing that permanently or not. The idea of reversing the Pearl Streets is something that has been discussed, and we'd be looking to take on, as well as the squaring off of the Oval. Some of these ideas are not necessarily contemplated in any greater detail than what was originally suggested in the 2015 study. So this scope of work would continue to collect the data, do analysis, but then continue the study particularly of the Walnut Street Oval area, as we have just received word that we're getting state and federal assistance with that project. So to be able to move that project along, to be able to reverse the pearls, our city engineer and our engineering department has made it a priority that we do a circulation study comprehensively, so we understand the potential impacts, and we can make some reports to you based on whatever findings or decisions that are made. You can then have the data to be able to assess whatever the ultimate design concepts that are contemplated. So this is really a data exercise, and it's something that we would be looking to undertake.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. So my question is, so the motion I read obviously states that this would be to look at the permanent implementation of the road diet on Main Street. But what you just discussed here was.
It's much larger than that.
So my question is this. How far on Main Street, what end to end on Main Street would we be talking about? And then what back streets would be studied to, I guess, accommodate all of that?
So the study area, as outlined in the scope, the study area proposed to be the same limits as previously evaluated, with the exception of the including of the northern terminus of the Veterans Memorial Parkway at Broad Street. So if you recall, Alderman Clemmons, what the previous iteration of that circulation study was, and that was relatively massive. It took in Spring Street, it took in Temple Street, it took in East Pearl Street, it took in West Pearl Street, it took in Factory Street, it took in Walnut, and I believe it did not, it terminated at Central and Walnut, I believe. I don't believe it continued all the way up to Pine, and I think that's really what it's going to take now, is also consideration of Pine and Central. And so you have a good understanding as what the flow of traffic would be into the quote-unquote circle, which is really important if we're going to proceed with the squaring off.
Yes, Alderman Clemmons.
So this doesn't include Spring Street?
This would.
Oh, it does include
It-
Spring Street
it
and
does.
the hospital medical center drive in Spring Street, it does include that?
Correct. That was part of the original area studied in 2015. So all of the original area in 2015 will be studied. And if
Okay.
you recall, there was recommendations of making Spring Street, I believe, two-way. And so I can only imagine that this will further that study.
Okay.
Anyone? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Clemmons.
Regarding Cisco SmartNet renewal in the amount of $49,955.63, funded from 54407, software maintenance 54414, hardware maintenance general fund. I would move to approve the annual renewal of software licenses and hardware support / replacement for the continued operation of the city's phone system and network switch equipment with Custom Computer Specialists LLC in the amount of $49,955.63. Funding will be through Department 122 Information Technology, Fund 54407, Software Maintenance / General Fund, $28,182.61, and 54414, Hardware Maintenance General Fund for $21,773.02.
And I believe Mr. Misevich is here. I
Thank you,
know
Mr.
he's
Mayor.
here, I see him right here, yes. Mr. Misevich.
Nick Misevich, Chief Information Officer for the city. As stated, this is for the annual maintenance for the software and hardware support for the city's phone system and network switching throughout each city building. We continue sticking with Custom since they are a platinum partner with Cisco, so they get the largest discounted prices from any vendor out there. We looked at an alternate SHI, and they were 10% higher just on the hardware support alone. So there was no point in continuing getting more information from them. So that's why we're staying with Custom for this support.
All right, questions or comments from the committee or anyone? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. It's regarding a 2023 Chevrolet Tahoe in the amount of $45,024 funded from 81500 Vehicles Surf. I would move to approve the purchase of a 2023 Chevrolet Tahoe to replace the 2014 Ford Explorer in the citywide communications department from McMulkin Chevrolet in the amount of $45,024. Funding will be through Department 157, Citywide Communications, Fund 81500 Vehicles/Surf.
Mr. Mansfield?
Good evening. Bill Mansfield, I'm the radio system manager for the city, responsible for all radio communications throughout the city that any city entity has. What's being proposed this evening is to purchase a new vehicle to add to the fleet of citywide communications. The Ford Explorer that currently, we have a Ford Explorer and a F-150 pickup truck that are used on a daily basis to travel out to the sites as well as go to anybody who requires our assistance for radio communications. We are anticipating that there will be an additional person added in the next fiscal year budget. And in anticipation with that, we would like to hold, we brought this up to the Board of Aldermen last week, we'd like to hold on to that Ford Explorer for that employee's use if and when he does come on board. So that's the main reason for the whole proposal in purchasing the vehicle. The vehicle is on the surf schedule to be replaced, and that's why I'm here this evening.
All right, questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. It's regarding contract for Manita's Table in the amount of $26,500 funded from 53145 Implementation Services/Grant Funds, Cressage Foundation Equity in COVID-19 Response. I would move to approve and enter into a contract with Marnita's Table Incorporated to provide consultancy services and proprietary professional expertise in the amount of $26,500. Funding will be through Department 171 Community Services, Fund 53145, Implementation Services/Grant Funds, Cressage Foundation Equity in COVID-19 Response.
And I believe Director Bagley is here.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. Bobby Bagley, Director of the Division of Public Health and Community Services. This contract proposal that we're putting through is to end a year-long project that we have been funded to work on through the Kresge Foundation that focused on equity and COVID. What we were doing was examining some of the disbeliefs or the lack of trust with our healthcare system. Gave us an opportunity to hear from our community partners that provide the services from our hospitals, mental health agencies, from the Harbor Care Organization and Lamprey. And what we were able to do is also have listening sessions with individuals from the community representing our Black US-born populations, our new Africans, Spanish-speaking Latin Americans and Portuguese-speaking Latin Americans. And over the course of the time with gathering the information, we wanted to convene all of those parties back together in the final convening and Juanita's table, which is out of Minnesota and has been doing this work across the country and had done several of these sessions in the state of New Hampshire, was the best contractor to do this work for us. And so we brought them in to finish this project up. And once this is complete, they'll do a data analysis and get back the information for us to finalize this larger project that we've worked on for the course of the year.
Any questions? Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you have any preliminary findings, any key information that you could share?
We actually do have some findings from the first listening sessions and from our key informant interviews that were done last year in November, and then those listening sessions were done throughout the spring. So we do have some of that data. What we're looking to do is merge all of that with what came out of the convening from Juanita's table to see how that information either shows us what we found was exactly what was being expressed in the community, or is there going to be some little differences that'll give us opportunity to work on. But we do have 2 partial reports completed, and once all of this information is gathered, we'll have the full report. This report is due to Kresge by February 1st, so we should have that soon, but we do have the other smaller reports.
Just one follow-up. Was the listening sessions done in native languages by the facilitators?
Yes, yes. The listening sessions were done in the original language, in 4 different original languages with interpreters from our city. And in fact, the way that Juanita's table operates is that when they come in, their contract actually pays for everything. And so they actually hire within our city. So they like, the way that their philosophy works is when they come into an area, they like to also reinvest the money back into the city. So they hire interpreters that are identified by individuals from our city. The whole concept is to come together and gather around food, Juanita's table. And they make sure that they provide and hire the food vendors from our area, again, putting back money into the community. So it's a very interesting concept, but it's about bringing community together and helping folks feel a part of the community. And we heard a lot of that from participants that actually were involved with the sessions. We've even heard some say this is the first time. We had one lady that had lived in Nashville for 42 years and said that this was the first time that she really felt included as a member of the city. And so it gives us an idea that these are things that individuals in our community like to participate in, and we can engage more from our community by doing more of these types of events.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Director.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Yeah, thank you. Director Bagley, this past Saturday at the Arlington Street Community Center, that Juanita is her name, was at the center. And she was larger than life, and I was really impressed how she dominated the community center at the Christmas party. I had an opportunity to meet her staff as well as a young man that actually live in Nashua, that came from Nashua, and I think it's 2 young men that came from the state that she came from. And I was totally impressed with her. And I was like, Juanita, that's a weird name. So I couldn't articulate that, but she did give me her card. And she did enlighten me on what she does. And she spoke very highly of you. That was the purpose of that light she gave me to give to you.
Right.
That I actually gave it to a member of our church today at the meeting this morning. So I will support this definitely.
Anyone else? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Unfinished business, we have none. Table in committee, nothing. New business resolutions, there are none. New business ordinances, there are none. Record of expenditures, Alderman Clemmons.
I move that the Finance Committee has complied with the city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period from December 2nd, 2022 to to December 15th, 2022.
Any questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. General discussion. Any general discussion items? Public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the committee? Remarks by aldermen. Any alderman here would like to make remarks? Alderman Clemmons,
Just want to wish everybody a happy holidays.
definitely. Alderman Tim,
I want to
Alderwoman
follow up
Timmons.
with happy holidays to everyone, including Happy New Year's. So I just want to also talk about the Allerton Street Community Center winter celebration. I was kind of disappointed that more of us did not attend that celebration, but it was fantastic. It was well attended. They had a lot of food. They gave out a lot of coats and hats and sneakers, and they had a lot of activity for children. It's a wonderful place that we really need to support. I mean, I just can't say enough about the community center, and our director there, Jessica, does a wonderful job and is very inclusive. So if you haven't gone over there, please go over and support the community center, because it's the city community center, although it's in Crown Hill, it encompasses the whole city and not just Crown Hill area. So if you have a moment, just go over there and see all the things that they do over there. And that's how I got an opportunity to meet my neighbor's table group, because they happen to be there. And they have a men's program as well. So if you're a single man with children, I think that's a good place to visit every Wednesday. I think they have their meetings on Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. Please try to visit the community center. You'll be impressed. Thank you.
Alderman Govea.
Just happy holidays, everyone. Happy New Year.
Alderman Moran.
What am I gonna say? Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and Happy New Year's.
All right. Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor Donches. Happy holidays as well. And also, on somewhat of a somber note, today marks, I think it's 34 years. Back in 1988, there were 34 students from Syracuse University that lost their lives over Lockerbie, Scotland. One of those 34 students was a teammate of mine and a classmate of mine at Bishop Girton, Steve Boland. He was on that flight, and it is this day that I, just kind of bow my head and remember Steve. And he was a great teammate, a really good Nashua, and he'll be missed. Thanks.
All right, well, happy holidays to everybody. Hope you have a good holiday season, and we will convene again in January. Alderman Clemmons.
I move to adjourn.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
And the meeting of the Finance Committee is adjourned at 7:43 p.m.